I know I've made an impact in the lives of others. And I'm very humbled and very grateful that in the time period that I've been on this planet, I've been able to touch other people's lives.
This podcast encourages and empowers you to create your own unique real story, develop your own unique real statement, and discover your own unique real self. The power is yours. Good afternoon, Dr. Anita Jackson. Previously, episode 548 of the 12-Minute Convos podcast. It's been just 2 years, 10 months, 11 days, 23 hours, and 30 minutes since we last had our conversation.
You know what? You only have one life to live. Live it with unlimited potential and possibilities and the highest dreams that you possibly can allow yourself to dream.
Dr. Anita, that was then. This is now. How are you doing today?
I'm doing quite well. I love that you have the time and date and all that. About our last conversation, I'm like, wow, that's down to the minute. I love it.
Yeah. I think the second would have been an overpush, but yeah.
It's good enough, though.
Well, it's so good to reconnect with you. The last time we spoke, there was a ton of things that we were not able to cover because I think the conversation really went in another direction, which is cool, which is great. But you're helping a ton of people. Give me an update as to what was happening then to now.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really honored to be here and to be a part of your 12-minute conversations and the impact that you're making in the lives of people around the world. The focus hasn't changed per se. So I'm the founder and CEO of the Unlimited Woman Alliance and AMJ Productions and Publication, which is our publishing agency. And the newest thing that we added on is Her Global Voice, which is our women's speaker platform. What I have found over the past probably 5 years, and especially this year, we just need more women to be sharing their story and their expertise on live stages. You know, I've had the opportunity to be a part of the Think and Grow Rich World Tour stage and other events. And what I noticed was that not enough women were really showing up at that level. So I decided if I'm not going to be on the stage, or if they're not inviting us to be on the stage, I'll just go create it. So that's what we're doing, is we're focusing on helping women become speakers, helping them continue to get published, and helping us change our family, our community, and the world by showing up in a much bigger and grander kind of way. So that's what I do.
That's wonderful. Wow. Now, where's the best place for someone that's listening to connect with you?
Probably my website. That's the best way to connect to me, which is www.Anita M, as in Michelle, Jackson.com.
Well, there we go. Now, there's a psychological side of what you do, and there's another P, and that P isn't silent the way psychology is, which is passion. It feels as though there's a passion that's been ignited for helping a woman succeed. Where did that come from?
Well, it really started with my background as a marriage and family therapist, so a psychotherapist, did that for 27 years. And while I was working at that level, I noticed that there were so many women who really struggled with not knowing that they were good enough. Most of their identity was based on their doingness rather than their beingness. And I had the same challenge. You know, I grew up in a family that basically gave you kudos if you did the right things in life, whether it's going to church or, you know, getting married, having kids, going to school, having a good job, paying your bills on time, you got kudos. And it can cause you to lose what it really means to just be you and know that you have value in yourself. And so when I entered into the entrepreneurial world, and as a therapist and as a coach, that's one of the key things that I kept saying is so many women were disconnected from their deeper sense of value, deeper sense of self. And it became my passion to help them know that they are enough. And then once we know that we're enough, we become unlimited. There's nothing we can't do for the good of ourselves, for the good of our family, the community, and the world.
Now, have you written a book?
Yes, I've actually written several books as an anthology, but I am being divinely pulled that it's time for me to write my actual individual book. And so I was hoping I'd get it done by November, but it looks like it's going to be next year. You can hold me accountable for that.
Yes, I will. Let me put in that one time here on I'm joking. Of course, we'll check back in, right? But the concept of Think and Grow Rich, how did you end up just interacting with that book?
Well, you know, I really appreciate that. So I think all of us have read the book, but There's nothing more powerful than actually seeing the book come to life. And how I got to be a part of the whole Think and Grow Rich tour was a mutual friend of mine knew the founder, John Chen, who decided he wanted to bring Think and Grow Rich to the public in a much bigger and grander way. So he created a movie, and from the movie, he created this huge tour. And I was one of the key speakers at the very first launch of it. And it was a very powerful impact. And what I have learned is Thinking and Grow Rich is such a deep and rich and powerful book, but sometimes it can be a little cumbersome, if you will, because there's so many details to it. So how you really learn and master the wisdom from that book is being in a community that's constantly teaching you the various principles of thinking and growing rich, not only from a place of just understanding it intellectually, but really mastering it as a part of your identity or making it as an embodiment, making it a part of your truth and your life. And it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to understand it, it's a whole nother thing to embody it. So that's the goal.
You are not married. You do not have children. And you just expressed within the conversation that one of those things, or actually two of those things, are like growing up in family and like, yes, now you're accomplished. Like, when are you going to get married? Or when you do get married, when are you going to have children? You know, and it just keeps going on. How deadly, how much to our detriment is this affecting who we are and who we can be?
As a woman, I had to deal with the fact that my dream, because I was like every other woman, I wanted to be married, I wanted to have kids. And for whatever reason, circumstances, situations, and biology said, no, this is not your calling, this is not your destiny. And what I realized for me is that I actually had put so much of my dreams in becoming a wife and becoming married because that's what my family had expected of me. And when it didn't happen, I fell into education. I fell into work. I fell into putting so much of myself in that I actually lost a large part of me and didn't realize it until things started to get my attention. And the reason why I bring this up is because what I've learned now, and I'm continuing to learn, is how important it is to be integrated, aligned, and whole based on your definition of who you choose to be and how you choose to live your life, not based on what everyone else requires of you. And I think we as women often get sucked into, consciously or unconsciously, directly or indirectly, this belief system that we have to live our life according to someone else's expectation. It's taking me years to understand my worth and my value, not from a doing perspective, but from a being perspective, even if that beingness doesn't include the vision or the dream or the desires of being a wife, being a mother, having that, I still have high value, high worth, high purpose without those labels, without those identities, without those definitions or descriptions of myself. And I think for those women and maybe even men who have gone through life where our outside world has tried to dictate who we're supposed to be, and it didn't go the way we originally thought it was going to go, or it didn't go the way others told us it should go. We've got to make a decision, and that word decision means to reach a definite conclusion, that we can define ourselves, we can create our own identity and live our best life from our truth rather than someone else's. Does that make sense?
I love it. I think as well, what we are seeing in society is a fast track version to what happens when you do get the thing that another person suggests you go after. And then when you do get it, because it was not the thing that initially you were created to do or is your purpose, we're seeing what occurs because of that. The level of depression for what others are looking at as, wow, you're successful. Like, why would you be depressed? But truly, if one isn't functioning at their true purpose, I think nothing can fill that void. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And, you know, honestly, it was this year that really kind of proved to me that I had to redefine my sense of self based on my truth rather than someone else's truth. And what I've learned, I think I've always known it, but sometimes you just need to be reminded through circumstances and situations that the world follows my lead. So if I'm living my life based on someone else's expectation, yes, eventually somewhere in there, I'm going to feel like something's missing, something's not in alignment, something's out of balance. And then that's what causes the anxiety or depression or the dissatisfaction with life. And what most of us will either do something, whether positive or negative, to fill that void. And that's how addiction kicks in. I think sometimes our circumstances and our situations convince us that this is the only way and we have to live according to this particular belief system and ideas. And so that's when I think the harder circumstances kick in and knock you across the head, is when you start to enter into the hero's or the heroine's journey, and it's trying to get your attention to say, hey, back up a little bit and let's reevaluate this so that you can live a more full and richer life based on your truth and not everyone else's.
That's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that tremendously. It gives me great joy. It is a grand opportunity to have this time where I'm able to have this conversation with you as your podcast accountability partner. Are you doing what you said you would be doing, Dr. Anita?
Right?
Right?
I would say 90% of what I said I would be accomplishing, I have done, and a whole lot more. But now the next level is much bigger, it's much grander. And I think that's why this conversation is so powerful, because I'm being reminded to do what's next on the list. I have to make sure I'm very much connected to who Anita is, not based on my titles, not based on my accomplishments, but just who I am, so that others can have the same kind of permission to live their fullest.
Love it. Seeing what you've seen, understanding that the beginning is great, the middle part is great as well. Have you looked at the end, understanding that it is possible to die today, to die tomorrow? And how have you taken that and used that to fuel you through to the future? The concept of death.
Great question. I will say, because of my faith, I never really thought of death in a negative kind of way. It's like, when it's time, because at least I can say for me, I know I've made an impact in the lives of others. And I'm very humbled and very grateful that in the time period that I've been on this planet, I've been able to touch other people's lives.
Love it, my friend. I appreciate you tremendously. This is a pleasure. I treasure. In closing, is there anything else you'd like to share with our amazing audience?
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here with you at this time and to share and speak and make a different impact in someone else's life. And I guess if I were to leave this call with a quote, one is, if you're given an opportunity and you don't know what to do, say yes and figure it out along the way. That quote's from Richard Branson. It's one of my favorite quotes. I live my life by it. And the other one is, you are enough. You always have been. You always will be. And if you can just hold on to those two, there's nothing you can't do with your life. You can live an unlimited life.
Dr. Anita Michelle Jackson, again, this was a pleasure. Thank you, my friend, for being on what is inspired by 12-Minute Convos with Angel Jones. This podcast is produced by Pod Edits. Visit podedits.com for professional podcast publishing.